Hello everyone, welcome back. We are still looking at government, and another topic here we have on the board, and now it is the principle of the rule of law, or you can refer to it as the concept of the rule of law. You can even just call it the rule of law as you find on the board, whichever way it's correct. Now, when you say rule of law, what does it mean? It simply means equality before the law. That everyone, regardless of your position or status, must be equal before the law. That means the law that is applicable to the governor should be applicable to a common man on the street. The law applicable to the president should be applicable to ordinary man on the street. All right? That no one should be above the law. All right? The concept of rule of law was actually propounded by an English lawyer known as A.B. Dicey in the year 1885 in his book titled Introduction to the Laws of the Constitution. In this book, A.B. Dicey argued that everyone must be subject to the law and that no one must be above the law. So the principle of equity, all right, is central to the rule of law. All right? Now, what are the features of the rule of law? Number one, you have what they call equality. For you to say that a particular country operates the principle of rule of law, everyone must be equal before the law. All right? The law that is applicable to the president should be applicable to a common man on the streets. If the president steals, the president should be punished in accordance with the provision of the existing law. If a common man also steals, the same law should be applicable. In other words, if this law applies to both the president and, of course, a common man on the street, then we can say that everyone is now equal before the law. But if what the president does, he cannot be tried because he's the president, and as a commoner you are tried for the same offense, that means you are going against the principle of rule of law as propounded by the English lawyer A.B. Dicey. Now, number two, we have what we call supremacy. The law must be supreme over all and sundry. The law must be supreme over everybody, all right, regardless of your position, regardless of whatever you are, regardless of how mighty you think you are in your office. The law is supreme. And if the law is supreme, that means whatever action you actually carry out must be subject to the provision of the existing law. All right? Yes, as a governor that you are not better than a commoner. All right? The same law that applies to the common man is applicable to you, the governor. All right? So the law is actually supreme. But you see, in some African countries, what we have is that individuals actually are stronger than institutions. But it's not supposed to be like that. All right? Institutions are supposed to be stronger than individuals. Because if individuals are stronger than institutions, you cannot actually have a good country. What you're going to have is a very corrupt country where few individuals that are powerful control everyone, all right, regardless of whether they have actually run counter with the provision of the existing laws or not. The law will always favor them because they are stronger. But the rule of law preaches against such, that since the law is supreme over everyone, then no individual should be stronger than institutions. Rather, the institutions should be stronger than every individual. Then you talk about impartiality. Now, according to A.B. Dicey, in his book, Introduction to the Laws of the Constitution, the laws of the land must be impartial, all right? By the time a case is taken to court, it must be judged in accordance with the provision of the existing law. Impartiality of the law actually shows that whenever a case is taken to court, you have a right to actually what they call fair hearing, all right, as we have here. The law must not be partial. Even if you are caught as a murderer, you are still a suspect until you are found guilty by the law court. Simply because you are a commoner does not give anybody any right to give you jumbo justice. You must be treated in accordance with the provision of the existing law. All right? Everyone appears to be guilty, to be innocent. Everyone appears to be a suspect when caught in a particular act until the law proves otherwise. All right? Yes. So, and then fair hearing. Fair hearing, of course, and impartiality, of course. They work together hand in hand. All right? you must have what they call fair hearing. All right? Even if you are caught as an offender of the law, as a suspect, as someone who is guilty, you are still innocent or a suspect until you are proven guilty by the law court. That is why even as someone who kills another, all right, guilty of manslaughter, guilty of murder, all right, you have a right to a lawyer, all right. A lawyer must defend you no matter what, all right. Nobody just says because you killed another person, therefore you should be killed immediately. As they are trying you, a lawyer must defend you. That is what they call fair hearing, all right. Yeah, because according to the lawyers, according to the law, you are still somehow a suspect and not found guilty, all right, until enough evidence has been brought to show that you are guilty. No one has the right to just give you what they call jungle justice. Then trial made public, all right. Trial in the court must be made public and not kept in secrecy, all right. Yes, that is why in the just concluded election, all right, held at the tribunal and of course the Supreme Court, all right, people were agitating for the fact that the trial should be made public to enhance the principle of the rule of law, so that as they televise them in the law court, everybody have access to the proceedings in the law court, all right. But if you do not make this trial public, people tend to suspect you that you are not being fair in the discharge of your duties, all right. That is why trial is said to be made public, so as to prove that rule of law is made practicable, all right. Then we have right to appeal, all right. Yeah, an individual has the right to appeal against any judgment. By the time a case is taken to the high court, for example, and of course you are not satisfied, you have the right to appeal at the appellate court or court of appeal, all right. If you still don't have that satisfaction of the judgment given to you at the court of appeal, you still have the right to appeal further at the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court has the final say, all right. After the Supreme Court, whatever judgment they give, you cannot go further than that. That is the end. So the judgment of the Supreme Court is always final. We call it the apex court. But don't forget, before Nigeria gained her independence on the 1st of October 1960, the highest court in the land was actually the Privy Council in London, all right. But when Nigeria became a republic in 1963, the Privy Council ceased to be the highest court in the land, and consequent upon that, Supreme Court became the highest court of law in the land. So every word sitting has the right to appeal against any judgment in the law court. And that's that for this. In our next class, we shall, we still have the rights of individuals, all right. That's number 7 here. Every individual has a, inalienable rights and privileges in the country he or she resides, all right. Such rights include rights to life. You cannot say you are practicing rule of law and you don't have the right to live in the country where you are, all right. You have right to life. Nobody shall have the right to deny you of your existence. Nobody can come kill you and then walk away majestically. Nobody has the right to do that. Then you have rights to own a property anywhere. That's why you see someone reside in Benin, reside in Port Harcourt, but own property in Abuja, all right. As long as you are capable and you have the money, you have the finances, you can own properties anywhere. Then you have the right to freedom of movement, and no one shall restrict you of the right to freedom of movement. And that's why you see you can travel from here to Sokoto to anywhere as far as your country is concerned, all right. And no one shall deny you of that. You also have right to freedom of speech, all right. You can opine on any issue that border on whatever goes on in your country, and no one shall deny you of that right to free speech. Then you also have right to freedom of association, all right. You can belong to any association, all right. You can belong to any religion, all right. For example, you can be a Christian and nobody has the right to deny you of the right to being a Christian. You can even be a native doctor. Nobody has the right to deny you of that right. You can be a Muslim. Nobody has the right to deny you. So you have the right to freedom of association and religion. Okay, any association you want to belong to, you are free. Any religion you want to belong to, you are free. So long as you are not disturbing the others. All right. So that's that. So if the principle of rule of law should be strictly adhered to, if there should be a strict adherence to the principles of the rule of law, every individual must have the right to that are actually codified in the Constitution, according to the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, which are actually adopted by nations of the world. And that's that for the features of the rule of law. In our next class, we shall look at the problems of the rule of law. We shall look at the limitations to the principles of the rule of law. All right, welcome back. We are still looking at the principles of the rule of law. And this time, we are looking at limitations to rule of law. When you talk about limitations, you are talking about the shortcomings. And when you talk about shortcomings, you are talking about the factors militating against the existence of the principles of the rule of law, which is also referred to as the problems of the rule of law. Number one, diplomatic immunity. What do you understand by immunity? Immunity means to be free from. All right? Who are the diplomats? Diplomats are the ambassadors. All right? We also call them foreign diplomats. Someone representing his country in another land, in a foreign land, is a foreign diplomat, otherwise referred to as an ambassador. And if you are representing your country in a foreign land, the land where you are representing your country, they don't have the right to actually try you in any court for whatever offense you may have committed. The highest thing they do is to declare you as persona non grata. That's person not accepted anymore, asking the home country to replace you. All right, so you cannot be tried in the country where you are residing, representing your own country. Then if you cannot be tried in the country where you are representing your own country, whereas other citizens within the country can be tried, that's a factor militating against the principle of rule of law under equality. Are you saying that you are superior to other citizens right in that country? So that's a problem. Now we have head of state immunity. Immunity, don't forget, simply means to be free from. Now in Nigeria, for example, you cannot try the head of state or president while in office. All right, no matter offense they commit, you can only try them while they leave office. So the immunity granted to head of state or president is a big problem facing the rule of law. All right, if a commoner steals, the person is tried in accordance with the provisions of the existing law. But if the president steals billions, there is no way you can try the president until the president leaves office before you charge him to court. All right, then we talk about delayed justice. All right, there is a saying that justice delayed is justice denied. All right, and again, no individual has the right to keep anybody within the police net or custody within for more than 24 hours without trial. All right, if you are doing that, you are actually encroaching the rights of the individual under what they call the Habeas Corpus Act. All right, so under the Habeas Corpus Act, every individual, every detainee must have the right to trial within 24 hours, and it shouldn't be more than. All right, because justice delayed is justice denied. So there should be a speedy process or accelerated process of trying those that are believed to have gone against the provisions of the existing law, which is the Constitution. Then we talk about military intervention. In Africa, for example, you have constant military intervention. All right, and whenever military take over power, they don't rule with the Constitution. They suspend the Constitution for their harsh law. And military harsh laws we refer to as decree. So when you rule by decree, you are not following the rights of individuals. Most times are denied them. All right, so several military interventions in the politics of Africa, all right, is one of the problems that bedevil, all right, the principles of rule of law in recent times. All right, then we talk about customs and tradition. All right, many a times trying to obey the custom and tradition of the society can actually make you go against the provision of the existing law, can actually make you go against the principle of the rule of law. For example, some traditions will tell you that on a certain day you are not allowed to go out. If you are not allowed to go out because of your custom or what your tradition demands, that means that alone is going against the principle of rule of law under right to freedom of movement. Okay, so you are being denied. So your custom and tradition is a problem to the rule of law. Then you talk about illiteracy. All right, if you don't know your rights in a country, all right, it's a problem to the rule of law. It's only when you are enlightened, when you are educated, that when people go against your rights, then you can sue the person. All right. But if you are illiterate, you don't know your right from your left. Even if people go against your rights, all right, as entrenched in the constitution, then you may not know that what you are supposed to do properly is to sue the person. So you can see that illiteracy actually, some persons are there, they beat anybody anyhow. They don't know that in law we call it battery. By the time you lay your hands on someone, you beat the person, if they charge you to court, you are in problem. All right. So illiteracy may not allow them to see that they are going against the right of certain individuals. Then you talk about the rich and the privileged few. All right. Now, many times in our society, the rich use their wealth to actually oppress the poor. All right. It's only when you have money in Africa, for example, that you can pursue a case. If you have not eaten for how many days, how would you pursue a case? So they can actually use, their wealth to actually deny you the cause of what justice. There are cases where the rich actually bribe judges to pervert the cause of justice. And you as a poor man, you don't even have money to feed yourself, let alone bribing a judge to favor you. All right. So you can see that the rich and the privileged few usually use their wealth to prevent normal justice from occurring in a given case. So that's that on the limitations to the rule of law. In our next class, we shall look at, factors, to consider to uphold the principles of the rule of what law, or the need to uphold the principles of the rule of law. Hello everyone, welcome back. We are still under the principles of the rule of law, all right? And this time we are looking at the need, or the reason why the principle of rule of law needs to be upheld, all right? Yes, so why we need to actually entrench the rule of law in our constitution. Number one, it protects individuals from arbitrary rule, all right? Yes, when rule of law is into practice, all right, in a given society, it will make it very difficult for anybody to actually rule in an arbitrary manner, okay, ruling carelessly, yes, which could actually lead to chaos, violence, or victimization. Then we talk about fundamental rights. By the time you uphold the principle of rule of law, then the rights of individuals, such as right to freedom of movement, right to life, will be guaranteed. Then we have what they call checks, despotic tendencies. Okay, by the time you uphold the principle of the rule of law in the constitution in a given society, now all of the excesses, all of the despotic tendencies on the part of the leaders are properly checked, and consequent upon that, they are forestalled from any action that could hamper the smooth running of the country. Then we talk about equality of all citizens. All right. If you uphold the principle of the rule of law, you know that every individual must be equal before the law, regardless of the position you are occupying, whether you are in a high political office or of course you are a commoner. So that's why you need to uphold the principle of the rule of law. Then we have the supremacy of the law. By the time you uphold the principle of the rule of law, you will know that, of course, the law is supreme over all and sundry. You will also know that every individual has the right to appeal against any judgment that does not favor him or her. You have the right to go to any court and then appeal. All right. The only court where you cannot appeal, all right, when they give their final judgment, is the Supreme Court. The only place where you can look up to is what? God. Right to press freedom. Okay, you know the meaning of press. Press refers to the journalist. All right. Usually, the press, they are referred to as the fourth organ of government that serve as a watchdog. All right, over the activities of individuals, people in public offices and all of that. Okay, the press must be able to discharge their duties without any fear of intimidation. All right. Yeah. Then the court has the final say. By the time an aggrieved person goes to court, whatever the court says should be final. all right, from the High Court up to the Supreme Court, all right. The court should have the final say and not just an ordinary individual using words of mouth to bastardize the law, all right. And that's that about the rule of law. In our next class, we shall look at the presidential system of government. And that's that.